Hey, everybody out there in Cryptid Land. Tonight we have the distinct honor of having Paul and Frank Patch on, and they're going to tell us about a really amazing UFO story. Biggest UFO I've ever freaking heard of. And we're going to talk a little bit about ghosts and, of course, my favorite, Bigfoot. So join me, them, and Dirty tonight on the Cryptid Quest Podcast. Hey, so tonight on the Cryptid Quest Podcast, we are very honored to have Paul Patch and his son.
How you doing?
Not bad. How you guys doing tonight?
Very good, thank you.
All right. So, and I know we're going to talk. You said you had a Bigfoot and some UFO encounters. And I'm going to leave it up to you guys where you want to start. So, and then I'll probably pop in and ask some questions as we go. But let's go ahead and get her going. Where you wanted to start with the UFOs or the Bigfoot?
Yeah, I would like to start with the UFO one.
Okay, very cool. I'm dying to, and I know listeners are probably dying to hear it too. So,
well, it was 1997, right, Frank? I was working midnights, the graveyard shift at work, so I was up trying to sleep. It was afternoon, and I think it was July, right?
No, it wasn't July. So it was
September.
yeah, it was I was in school, so it definitely wasn't July.
It was in the fall of
Okay.
97, and I was trying to get some sleep, and my bedroom was up on the second floor. Frank was a boy at the time, and all of a sudden I heard pebbles hitting my window. I was a little grouchy. I got up and ran to the window and yelled down at him, and he goes, "Dad, come out here. You got to look at this." So I jumped out of bed. I didn't know what was going on. I ran down the stairs, ran into the backyard, and Frank pointed up into the sky, and he said, What is that?" And I looked up, and for a split second, I thought it was a flock of geese. But because I saw this like boomerang line in the sky. But as I looked at it, I realized it wasn't geese, and it was coming right towards us, very slow. And we were both in awe. We were both looking up. And as this thing came overhead, I'm going to use the word cloak, but you could see the leading edge of it because it had contrails coming off, and it was just gigantic. Being an engineer, I wanted to, get a measurement in my mind. And I said, this thing is about as wide as 5 modern aircraft carriers, nose to nose. That's how big it was.
Holy
I
cow.
remember saying to myself, if there were people on this thing, there could be 100,000 people. Because I watched Shea Stadium being built in Flushing, and I know it holds 70,000 people. And this thing was huge. It was much bigger than that. So we're looking at this thing, and I don't know if you ever saw the movie Predator.
Yes.
When the predator is up in the trees and you look at him, but it looks almost like mirrors, like mirroring the environment. That's what this thing was like. When you looked at it, it was like showing the sky, but almost like it was trying to cloak itself. But
You kind of like pixelated or something.
yeah, you could see the outline of it. There was no noise whatsoever. And it was at a very low altitude. I'm going to guess maybe, 4,000 feet. It went right over us real slow. We just watched it. And one tip of it was on one side of the horizon, and the other tip was on, it was just massive. It was gigantic. And I'm saying to myself, how could something so big going so slow not fall out of the sky? And we just watched it move on. And about a minute later, 3 black Apache military helicopters with no insignia on them went flying by. They were obviously tailing this thing and in a triangle formation, and they were just following it. And I read later about a thing called the Westchester boomerang. It was a very popular UFO to be sighted in the New York area, and I think that's maybe what I saw. But it was just mind-boggling. Before that, I had like an open mind towards UFOs. After seeing that, I know they're here because it could have been man-made. It was just too huge. It it was just freaking gigantic. You know, it was really something. I don't know, Frank, if you want to add anything.
Yeah, no, the thing that struck me most amazing was it kind of looked almost like he described it as almost like having a mirror type effect. To me, it almost looked like it was semi-materialized. If that makes sense. Like semi-transparent. And you could definitely see the contrails. It was a long time ago, but that sticks out in my mind. And just on the sheer size of it, to not hear anything like jet or anything was absolutely amazing.
That's crazy. And I mean crazy in a cool way. But Frank, and how old were you at the time? You said
I was a junior in high school, and I had just come home from football practice.
Okay.
And I came home. I wanted to take the dogs out because my father was upstairs sleeping. He was working late usually, and I took the dogs out. I just happened to look up, and I saw this thing, and I couldn't put two and two together at first. I'm like, what the hell is this thing? Never seen anything like this. So I immediately wanted somebody else to see it. I wanted a second set of eyes. So I was throwing rocks at his window, and woke him up, and he's pissed off. And I said,
okay,
you got to come out and check this out.
Okay, I was getting ready to ask about because Paul mentioned the rocks, and I'm like, I thought the rocks sound might have been coming from the object, but it was you trying to get his attention.
Yep.
Okay. All right. That makes a lot more sense. I'm like, why would it be dropping like little pebbles on your guys' place when it's obviously trying to cloak and doesn't sound like it wants to be seen, but it sounds like that's what it was trying to do some kind of a cloaking thing. Is that your guys' perception?
Yeah, I mean, it appeared to me that this thing was trying to not be seen, that it was trying to blend into the sky, but the contrails really gave it away. Because, you know, when you see a jet and you see that white plume behind it, that's what it had, and like it was gigantic. It was just so big, and you just saw all these contrails up in the sky.
Yeah, when it was directly overhead, you really got a grip at just how big it was. It was absolutely gigantic.
Yeah.
So, and you kind of gave me a context by describing types of planes side by side, but for a layman, can you give us like maybe in feet or yards how
or I would have to say it was at least a half a mile wide.
I was bigger than that.
Yeah,
half a mile to a mile. I know it sounds crazy.
No,
that's how big this thing was.
He compared it to the Westchester boomerang. To me, it looked from my memory, it looked more like the Phoenix Lights. That gigantic boomerang shape.
Yeah.
Just like that.
Oh,
it was definitely the same shape as that.
I remember saying it's like a floating city. I mean, that's how big it was. And I remember saying to myself, if there were people on this thing, humans, you could easily put 100,000 people on. That's how big it was. I know it sounds crazy.
No, it doesn't.
That big. I mean, it was a mothership or something.
That doesn't. I mean, it sounds, you know, and I wouldn't say crazy because there's obviously something going on out there more than what we know. So width wise, huge. So depth wise, you say it was a boomerang shape. Did you get any? Or was the cloaking too advanced to where you couldn't really tell where it began and ended? I mean, you said you saw contrails. Did that give you maybe an idea where the end of the ship was?
I'm not sure. What did you say?
Okay, so you said you saw contrails. It was boomerang shape.
Yes.
You got the width, but I'm talking about depth, like from front to back. Could you gauge that at all?
What I remember.
Yeah, it was really like a giant boomerang, if you could think that. And like I said previously, in my mind, I tried to say, okay, you know, so I would remember, because, you know, your memory fades with time. I remember saying this thing is at least as big as 5 modern aircraft carriers placed nose to nose, at least that big.
Oh, okay, nose to nose? Are you talking about width-wise then?
If they were following each other. If you had 5 aircraft carriers following each other. And I know because I had friends who were in the Navy and worked on aircraft carriers, and they said they would have like a crew of 20,000 on those things. So this thing, like I said, I doubt there was humans in it, but if there was humans in it, there could easily have been 100,000 people in it. That's how big it was. It was really like a floating city, and it made no noise, and it was going slow, and it was at a low altitude. It was just amazing. It was going really slow. Yeah, really slow.
So, and you might have already mentioned this, but I don't know if I caught it. What time of night did this happen?
It was daylight. It was
it was daylight?
It would have been right around for us, because I got home from school right close to dinner time, so anywhere between 4 or 5 o'clock.
Yeah.
PM.
Holy cow!
And that's summertime, so it's still light out. I mean, it wasn't dark at all.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That makes it even more amazing because, I mean, I hear, at nighttime, even if it was cloaking, the night might make it less visible, but in the middle of the day, well, I wouldn't say the middle of the day, but still daylight.
Plain sight.
Holy
and I was kind of a skeptic before that. And when I saw that was truly like a life-altering moment. Like it just, your mind just flips out when you see something like that because, it's not supposed to be there. And, there's nothing you can compare it to. So it really makes you stand there in awe. Like, we were standing with our jaws hanging out. I mean, just looking at this thing, it
wasn't emanating any light or anything like that.
No.
And it, you couldn't see anything like, I mean, we're far, for an aircraft, it was close. But you couldn't see anything like if you read the accounts of like the Westchester boomerang, people say they could see like rivets and like seams and stuff like that. You couldn't see anything like that. I mean, you could just make out the shape and the contrails, and it was just massive.
I remember thinking to myself, either it's covered with mirrors and reflecting the sky around it, or the exterior of this craft is like a TV screen, and they're playing like
what you're supposed to see in the background.
And Frank had a third idea. He said, no, maybe it wasn't totally was transparent and not,
I've heard other people describe craft as being like looking as almost like semi-materialized, and I thought about it, and I'm like, you know what? I mean, it's possible because you could see it, but it was transparent.
I mean, something like that would definitely be possible because it sounds like we're dealing with something that is not documented fully, at least documented to where we know.
I don't think we or the Russians or the Chinese or anybody could make this thing. I definitely felt this was not man-made. It was just too gigantic and,
And so after you guys saw it, did it just kind of like fade away or
it just kept going? It was heading south. It approached us from the north, which would be Long Island Sound. So it must have flown over Long Island Sound. We were in Long Island living, a populated area, and it went right overhead and just continued south till it was out of sight. And like I said, then behind it came 3 Apache helicopters. It didn't say Army on it, but I knew they were military.
Yeah.
And they were in a triangle formation, and they were obviously following this thing.
Heading in the same direction.
And they were just lagging behind a little. So it was being tailed by our military.
Yeah, and that was the only thing you heard was helicopters.
Yeah, them you could hear clear as day.
So when the helicopters showed up, could you still see the craft, or was it out of your
starting to get out of vision? But you could still see it when they showed up, and they were following it. They were clearly following it. They were following it.
Well,
they knew it was there.
I mean, I 1000% believe you because I've only had one UFO sighting that involved craft, military craft, and same thing happened. It was the middle of the day. It was like 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I saw it, and then wasn't 10 minutes later, all of a sudden fighter jets from Edwardsville Air Force Base started heading the exact same direction I saw the thing in. So it sounds so similar. And you know that they knew it was there, and they were going to investigate, but you're never going to hear about any of that.
Oh, definitely not.
Only reason we're hearing about it is because you saw it.
Yeah. And my idea of like UFOs, just from hearing other people, they're usually like the size of a house, or, maybe 50 feet, 100 feet. But this thing was nothing like that. It was freaking huge. I mean, huge. You looked up at one end was over there and the other end was there in the sky. It was really mind-boggling.
I feel fortunate to have gotten to see something during the day, because ever since that when I saw that, I always paid attention to the skies. And I've seen some things at night since then, but I've never had a daytime sighting like that ever again. And I feel very fortunate I got to see something like that. And I got a lot of friends in the military, and they're convinced I saw a stealth bomber, but I said absolutely not. It was gigantic, so. And it almost looked semi-transparent. And
yeah,
I'm open-minded. I mean, it could have been military. Who knows? Could have been extraterrestrial. I mean, that's what I felt it was. It was just so gigantic, and there was no jet propulsion. And if there would have been jet propulsion, I was just a teenager at the time. But I mean, you would have felt the rumbling below your feet. I mean, it would have been so loud. Something that big.
Yeah. There would have been. One of my friends suggested the same thing, that I saw a stealth bomber, and I laughed. I said, "You could park 500 stealth bombers on top of this thing," and I'm not exaggerating. It was big.
Yeah,
that's how big it was. This wasn't a stealth bomber. Stealth bombers are smaller than a 747. I live in between JFK Airport and LaGuardia Airport. I've been seeing jets my whole life flying overhead. I was in the SST, and the 747 was the biggest thing I ever saw in the sky. I know there's military transports that are somewhat bigger, but nothing like what this thing was. This thing like dwarfed the biggest bomber we have.
I mean,
dwarfed it.
I am totally on your side on this, because not just the boomerangs, but there's been a lot of the triangle craft that people have been seeing, and they describe it the same way, kind of like you could see it, it's there, but you can see through it, but there's a distortion. And they said these things are the size of cities.
Yes, absolutely. The size of a city. That's what entered my mind. It's like a city in the sky going by.
I can't even comprehend. I've never seen it. I mean, I've seen some things that make my mind think, but I've never seen anything like that. And wow. Yeah, you guys really should consider yourself fortunate, because
it was a once in a lifetime, and I'm glad he woke me up, because
I've been a believer ever since. It was amazing.
How could you not?
Yeah, I don't blame you. Yeah, I don't blame you for being a believer. I mean, I was a believer before I heard any of this, but it just kind of gives it more credibility.
Even if it was man-made,
even what?
Even if it was man-made, there was men in that thing operating it. That's still amazing to me, just because of the sheer size of it and the transparency and all that. So,
well, the one thing I have to say to that, and this is just my own personal opinion, if it was man-made, I don't think they got to technology here on Earth.
No, I agree. There's no question in my mind that it was not man-made, because
I don't think
you don't have that technology. And not only that, where would you put this thing that nobody would see it?
Exactly.
I mean, it's as big as a city. I mean, it's not like they can hide it in Area 51.
Yeah.
It's bigger than Area 51.
Yeah.
It's
about the only place you'd be able to hide it is maybe the ocean or the moon.
Yeah.
And then you're talking a whole nother ball game, because there's a lot of stories about these things coming up out of the ocean, but the ocean is 95% unexplored.
Oh yeah.
So
big.
if you're going to hide it here on Earth, that'd be the best place. And honestly, I mean, obviously I don't know, but I don't think we had that type of technology yet.
No, I don't think so.
So
This was extraterrestrial.
I think 100% for sure. You guys saw something that probably you weren't supposed to.
Yeah, I really think it was some kind of mothership.
Yeah. Wow.
I'm shocked that I haven't heard over the years of anybody else coming forward. I mean, we lived in a highly populated area. You know, like
You
we live
mean
in the country now, but
Yeah.
that was suburban Long Island, right near New York City. How could nobody else see that?
But we didn't report it to anybody.
Yeah.
We didn't call
Exactly.
the police.
That's true.
You know, and I think most sightings, whether you talk UFOs, Bigfoot, I saw a study once where they said only about 5% of sightings are ever reported. And I believe that.
Oh, I do
Because
too.
we didn't report it. You know, when we had the Bigfoot up in the mountain, which is another story, nobody reported it.
Yeah.
You know,
Well,
you know, so
I've got something to tell you right now. I've been only been doing this for a short time, but my sister, who's older than me, had a Bigfoot sighting when I was just a wee toddler. Actually, I'm not even sure if I was born yet. And I just found, and now I'm 53 years old. I just found out she had a sighting 3 years ago.
wow.
Wow.
You know, it's people just don't talk about it. She's like, "Oh yeah, I've seen one." I'm like, "What do you mean you've seen one?" She's like, "Oh yeah." She's like, I'm like, "What do you mean you saw it?" She's like, "I saw it." She's like, "I saw the hair. I saw the whole body. It was running after our car." She said, "I saw it. Its arms were going down past its knees." I'm like, so I mean, I get it. People just don't talk about that thing because, for one, everybody's going to think you're crazy.
Yeah,
And
I haven't told the UFO story too many times, and a couple of even friends of mine have told me you're crazy.
You're
Not
not
that they
crazy.
believe I'm really crazy, but it's just like their gut reaction.
Yeah.
But it doesn't bother me because I saw what I saw. I'll take a lie detector test. I'll swear on the Bible, whatever you wanted me to do. I saw it. You know, it happened.
Well, a lot of UFO stuff is starting to come out now.
Yeah.
So you don't have to be crazy to tell your story now. I mean, back in the day, yeah, a lot of people had a lot of bad thoughts on that stuff, but anymore, I think it's becoming a little bit more norm than it used to be,
Yeah.
which I love that.
Yeah,
you know, because
Yeah.
I love the fact that people can come out and talk about what happened, what they've seen, and not feel like they're going to get beat up over it.
Yeah, I have a
Because
thick skin anyway. I really don't care.
and you know what? Another thing, once you start, and I'm not saying anything about your age or my age, but once you start to get older, you just don't care anymore. You're
I
just like,
agree.
well, it happened, and I'm going to tell people.
Yeah.
So, and I appreciate that. I appreciate that, and I give you kudos for both of you guys coming out and telling what you saw. So, you had that encounter, and you say you had another UFO encounter, or was that the main UFO encounter?
I've seen UFOs 2 other times. Nothing as dramatic as that one. I saw one with my son Frank. The one we saw that was over.
My old house.
Yeah. The weird thing about that was we had binoculars, and we're looking at this. It was nighttime, and we're looking at this thing that was basically you could see really far from Frank's backyard because he was on a mountain, and then it was like a valley, and you could see in the distance the city of Newports.
Okay.
Newports is a college town in upstate New York, and you could see all the way there from his backyard. We saw this round thing that was like covered with colored lights, like hovering over. It looked like it was hovering over Newports, and then in a split second, it disappeared and appeared like 10 miles closer to us, like in an instant, almost like it teleported there, you know,
There
like
you
in a
go.
split second. Remember how weird that was?
Yeah, it did look like it was the same craft, but could it have been another one that lit up when the other one stopped illuminating? It's tough to say, but it really appeared like it changed locations like instantly.
Yeah.
And to get a shape
what I
on
think.
it was nighttime. It looked like it was like a strobing orb almost.
Yeah.
If I had to describe it, but it's really hard to say at night.
Yeah.
But it was nothing like that daytime sighting, but it was very interesting.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, and honestly, even if it is blinking out at one point and showing up at another point, even if it's not the same craft, they're in sync.
Yeah.
So, and that's another thing that I don't know, that, you know, fighter jets ain't, you know, government's not going to be out doing things. I wouldn't think doing things like that.
Yeah, I wouldn't think so either.
And they almost looked stationary when they were illuminated. Like my father said, it looked like it shot across the sky. It was lit up, and then it went out, and then it reappeared again. Yeah, so it looked like it had changed locations, but when it was illuminated, we saw no movement whatsoever. It looked like it was lit up and strobing, but as far as actual movement, it appeared stationary.
Okay, so when you say strobing, so it's kind of like whoa, whoa,
yeah, exactly.
Okay, and then all of a sudden, boom, gone here, and it's over here doing the same thing.
Yep,
but
exactly.
Wow.
And that's a distance of about 10 miles in a split second. I think it was the same craft. I don't believe it.
I mean, we looked at each other and, excuse my language, but we said, holy S-H-I-T.
Yeah.
Yeah. I almost just said that too.
I was assuming it was the same craft, and my mind was blown.
Yeah, it blew us away. We just, you know, disappeared and appeared over here, like 10 miles closer. It was weird.
Yeah.
You know, it was really weird.
So, man, oh man, UFOs. I to me, I've been getting a lot of UFO stories lately, and I don't know. I just got a stinking suspicion something's up. How long ago was that encounter?
That was what, about
no, that was
7 years ago.
7 years.
Because it was right around when we
9 years ago.
when we moved into that new house. Yeah,
about 9 years ago. The nighttime one was about 9 years ago.
Okay, because it just seems like things are really starting to ramp up.
Well,
I mean, on a lot of different scales.
I heard somebody put forth a theory on that, and they said the universe has, like, I'll use the term, a spider web that goes out in the universe. And when we started setting off nuclear bombs, it was disturbing that spider web, and it attracted attention. I don't know if that's true. That's just a theory that some people are putting forward, but who knows?
Okay.
Maybe,
well,
you know, maybe they use the Earth for its natural resources, and they don't want us to screw it up. And that's why UFOs appear over nuclear bases, and they shut down the missiles. They've done it to the Russians. They've done it to us. And maybe they're not going to allow us to have a nuclear war because they don't want us to screw up the Earth. And that's what I'm thinking.
Well, I 100% don't. I don't think you're wrong on that, because, like I said, I've been talking to a lot of people. That seems to be a big theory. Do I know if it's true or not? I don't know, but it sounds logical that their attraction to us has come. I mean, they've been watching us a long time, from what I hear. You know, do I know anything for a fact? No, but just from what people tell me. But they've been watching us. But when we started ramping up our nuclear capabilities, that's what got their attention focused on us.
Right.
And they are determined not to let us get to that point.
That's what I think.
That's what I've heard. I don't know which way to go on it, because I don't know. I would love that. I would love for that to be true, because honestly, the one creature on this planet and in this universe I don't trust is humans.
I agree with you. 100% right about that.
So, I mean, and I'm not trying to be a jerk to people out there, my listeners, you know, I'm not saying, you're all bad. No, I'm not saying we're all bad, but there's entities out there in this world that are not looking for our common best interest. And, you know, it kind of makes me feel a little better thinking that, you know, I believe in God. I think there's a God, a higher power, and I think they're watching over us. And maybe these are an extension of Him watching over us, because I believe God, and I'm not meaning to get off on a God tangent, but I believe He's created everything out there, and we're all meant to work together. But unfortunately, with humans' free will, there's been a few bad seeds. So, I mean, where does that go from here? I don't know, but that's just my quick take on it. Thanks for taking my soapbox.
I agree, and I always think to myself, it would be impossible for us to know if there's ever been official communication with any governments and these things or anything of that nature. But you know, if they are so advanced that they can do interstellar travel, they got to be eons ahead of us. And that's why I also feel in my heart that personally I'm not worried about. I truthfully believe they're out there, and I'm not worried about them because they are so far intelligent to us that if they had ill intent towards us, we'd be gone. We would be gone. I mean, that would be it. I mean, they're so much more intelligent, so much more advanced than us. So I really don't think they're a threat whatsoever. I agree with you. I think a lot of the true threats come from humanity itself. Because unfortunately, yes, there's a lot of great, good people out there, but there's also plenty of bad ones.
Yeah.
I think we might be an experiment because I don't believe there is a missing link. I believe that extraterrestrials injected great apes with our DNA, with their DNA or whatever, and they're just studying us, watching us evolve. Who knows? I mean, that's what I've always thought, you know. And,
that's a great theory.
Yeah.
I like it. I mean, because I don't know, you know, no, I'm being for real. I like it because there's gotta be a reason why, for one, we are so much more intelligent than any other life form on this earth. And for two, how we've come so far in such short amount of time. I think there's beings or powers out there that are giving us a heads up and trying to get us to a certain point of enlightenment, disclosure.
Yeah. And if you think about it, you know, as time goes on, the human race has less and less hair covering their bodies, right? And their heads are getting bigger. That's a fact that our brains, we may evolve into something like a gray or something, you know.
Yeah.
Who knows? You know, who knows?
Well, I'm hoping to maybe evolve into a Nordic rather than a gay. My luck, though, I'll end up a reptilian. But no, and I believe those races are out there. I mean, I talk to the people that they say they have contact with them, and you know, who am I to say they're lying? I don't know, but that's why I do this podcast and I talk to people. I'm trying to find out, am I going to find the ultimate answer? Probably not, but you know, at least we can hash around some ideas and some thoughts. And if the right person gets the thought in their head, maybe they'll come up with an answer that we never had. So that's my biggest thing. Obviously, I don't think I'm going to be the smart guy that figures anything out. I'm just a talker. That's why I bring you guys on.
You're doing your part, man. You're getting everybody's message out there. They're eyewitness accounts and stuff, you know. That's huge.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm trying to do. I love talking about the aliens a lot. I really do. But what got me doing this podcast is Bigfoot, because I've had an experience and I want to hear about yours. Then we'll talk a little more about Bigfoot and aliens after that. But I want to hear about your experience. Oh, I'm dying to hear it.
Okay. So it's 1965. I'm 8 years old at the time. My parents had bought me a Daisy BB gun. And our summer house was in Haynes Falls, New York, which is up in the mountains. And my thing every day is I had a route that I would walk through the woods. I would cross over the road. They called it North Lake Road. And I went down, and it was an abandoned railroad tracks that were abandoned for about 100 years. It was the old Ulster, Delaware Railroad that used to go up to the Catskill Mountain House, which is long gone. But anyway, so one day I get up in the morning, grab my BB gun, and I walk the same route I walk every day. And there's a swampy area where I used to walk around. Now, keep in mind, in 1965 in New York, no one had ever heard of Bigfoot.
Yeah.
We didn't hear about it until 1968 when the Gimlin film, Patterson-Gimlin film came out. That's when the term Bigfoot kind of went national. Before that, I'd never heard of Bigfoot, you know. And I'm 8 years old, so I'm walking, and I see these footprints. And they were barefoot, like human-looking barefoot tracks, but they were freaking gigantic. And the distance between them was like 4 feet. So even as an 8-year-old, actually I got a little scared because I said, holy shit, there's some gigantic barefoot guy running through the woods at night. Now, if you've been in the woods at night, you know you can't run. You're going to get your eyes poked out by a branch.
100%.
Anybody who goes to the woods knows that. You can't run at night. Either you'll trip and break your neck, or you'll gouge your eye out on a branch. It's just, and I said, that's scary that this huge guy was running through here last night. And then I walked a little further and I heard loud wood knocks. Now, I didn't know what a wood knock was. You know, I never heard that term until years later when I listened to Bigfoot stories. So in my mind, I'm saying, wow, is there a guy whacking a tree with an axe? Because that's the only thing I could think of that it could be. It was in the middle of nowhere. There was no houses, no roads. It's Catskill Park. So, you know, it's wilderness area. And it kind of scared me too. I said, why is somebody out here hitting that tree like that? And I started to walk towards it. And just then I heard a second one knocking on a tree to my right. And then I realized, shit, would it be two guys? And then I got scared because I just knew something wasn't right. So I kept walking. I walked down, crossed the road, went down to the railroad tracks, and I was there 100 times. I'm walking down, and I notice, for lack of a better term, this huge nest. I thought it was a hunter's blind, but it was July, and there's no hunting in New York in July. There's nothing that's in season in July. And it was crudely built, but it was all evergreen branches that were broken, and it looked like in a dome shape, and it looked like a giant nest. I mean, it was gigantic, and I looked at this thing, didn't think too much of it, and I went on my way. Now, at the time, we had neighbors. They had the house next to us. They were from Bloomfield, New Jersey, and I was good friends with a girl named Lois, who was their daughter. We were very good friends, and her cousins had come to visit, Ralphie and Joni, and they ran up to me. And this is like a day after I saw what I saw in the woods, and they were telling everybody they swore to God they saw a gorilla in the woods. Now, keep in mind, in 1965, if you had never heard of Bigfoot and you saw a Bigfoot, it might look like a giant gorilla to you.
100%.
And they said, we saw this. I mean, and I believed them because I knew them. And they just swore they saw this gorilla in the woods, and they were terrified. That night, the Casalinos were sitting in their backyard. They had eaten dinner, and they have a deck that's on the second floor, and there was like 5 or 6 of them up there. And they were just sitting there. They were all cigarette smokers. They were all puffing on their cigarettes, and they heard something. It was nighttime. They heard something walking in the woods. Just beyond their backyard was forest. And it's state land, so it goes forever. They heard something really big walking, and they all looked at each other like, what is that? and it sounded almost like a person walking. So Casey, the father, ran and got a flashlight and he shined it, and they all screamed because he said they saw these two red eyes, big red eyes, and they said it was at least 9 foot off the ground. And the grandmother who was visiting from Italy, who didn't speak any English, started screaming, "It's the devil" in Italian. But I never saw Bigfoot myself. I saw the tracks. I heard the wood knocks. I saw the nest. But they actually saw the eyes of this thing. And this all happened within a couple of days. So there's no question in my mind that that summer there was a Bigfoot there.
Wow.
There's nothing else that could explain that.
I'm not gonna get upset. You said it was your grandma that called it the devil?
The ones who saw it was about 5 or 6 people.
Well, no. Who the Italian lady that called it the devil?
Oh, it was the grandmother. She was like 90-something years old.
Okay.
She was visiting from Italy and she didn't speak any English.
I am not.
She was saying it's the devil in Italian. She was saying it's the devil. It's the devil. She was freaking out, but they were all scared because of the size of this thing.
Well, I'm not going to get it. I'm not going to make fun of her for calling it the devil, because when the night I had my experience, I was saying it was a demon. So.
Oh, there you go.
I get it.
Close.
I get it.
Was it big what you saw?
I did not see it. I heard a gorilla. They saw a gorilla. I heard a gorilla in the woods of Missouri. It sounded like silverback gorilla, 100%. And then it started doing the howling, then the demonic chatter. And I said, there's a demon out in these woods. So I get it. I get it. So wow. So poor lady had to go back to Italy thinking the United States is nuts.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Man. So the nest, was it like just like a ground nest? Did it have boughs over the top, or was it just like a big bird nest?
The abandoned railroad tracks that I used to walk on, the rails were gone, the metal rails, but the wooden ties were still there. And there was already small trees growing out of it, whatnot. But it was an easy place to walk. And it was also a beautiful spot if you were, I'll use the word ambush predator.
Yeah.
That's why I thought it was, in my mind, I thought it must be hunters, must have been in there.
Got you.
But in retrospect, I'm positive it was a nest. That Bigfoot made a nest because he was around. I mean, he was leaving foot tracks, making wood. And there was more than one, because when I heard the wood knocks, there was 2 of them.
So have you, by any chance, out in that area or any other area, have you ever ran into what you might consider to be called an orb?
I've never seen anything since then. That was the only time I've ever.
Okay.
I went once or twice to that area, but didn't see anything. And for years, I'd been through there and never saw anything. Just that one summer, that one several-day period, everything was happening.
Huh.
I just put 2 and 2 together. I mean, with Ralphie and Joni swearing that they saw a gorilla, and what the Casalunos saw that was 8 foot tall with red eyes, the huge, footprints that I saw. I mean, that guy would have to be 7, 8 feet tall, that big feet, that big,
Yeah. Well, I mean, like I said, I totally believe you, because like I said, I didn't see it with my own eyes. And then I found when I started talking about what I heard, then I found out my sister actually did see one. And I found out my daughter's boyfriend's dad had saw one. And then I'm like, all of a sudden, everybody around me has seen these things. And I'm like, what the heck? Where are they coming from? Because I'd never heard of them before. Because my encounter was in 2016. All these other ones were happening back in the 70s, 80s, 90s. So I believe they're out there. The weird thing for me is all of a sudden it seems like a lot of orb. And do you guys know what I'm talking about when I say an orb?
I've heard from other eyewitness accounts that I've seen on Facebook programs, not Facebook, YouTube programs and stuff, that people have described orbs. So I am familiar with what you're saying. Orbs. Okay. Or like people have seen orbs in the area where they witnessed Bigfoot.
Yeah, I've had not to get into another story, but we went
come on.
We went to Lake George. Lake George is a big vacation place in New York. It's an absolutely beautiful place. And I'm a New York State history buff, so I'm very familiar with it. The movie, what is that movie that they did Lake George? Last of the Mohicans.
Oh, yeah.
Well, that movie was about Fort William Henry at Lake George. And it's basically a true story. They took a little bit of liberty to change
they
some
always
things,
do.
but basically they have a ghost tour because it's very haunted. And we went on it, Frank and I and Fiona, who's a psychic, clairvoyant. She's professional. She gives readings. She sees dead people. When she was a child, she saw them clear as day. Now they look like shadows to her that she's older. But anyway, the three of us went on this tour, and we're down in the basement, which was the infirmary at the time. And a lot of bad things happened there because when the French and the Indians took over the fort, the British surrendered the fort and left. The people in the infirmary who were too sick to march, they left them there. The French were supposed to guard them, and they didn't. And the Indians went down there and tortured them all to death. So it's a very evil, evil place. Anyway, we're down there, and I look over, and I see Fiona staring up in the air, and her lips are quivering. And that's what she does when she sees spirit. Her lips quiver. And I'm looking at her, and I don't see what she's looking at, but I snap a picture anyway. Later, when I got home and I looked at the pictures, there's Fiona, and there's this big green orb, exactly where the spot she's looking at that came out in the photograph. She told me later that it was a Native American Indian warrior that had died there. And people have seen him before. The other funny thing about that fort is before you go on the tour, they sit you in the parade ground, and then they have two college kids. Their summer job is to tell you the history of the fort, which is kind of boring to me because I knew a lot more about the fort than they did. Yeah. And so while I'm sitting there, I looked up to the left, and I see this on the second floor window. I could have sworn I saw a woman, like in white, looking at me. And I'm staring. I look down. I look up. I take a picture. Nothing came out in the picture. And then all of a sudden, Fiona elbows me. I look at Fiona, and she says to me, "Do you see her too?" She saw her too. And then we went on a tour. And at the end of the tour, they have a table with all photographs of like ghosts that people took there. And there's a whole section on the lady in white. And that she's seen in that window. And that blew me away because I saw her. She was watching us. It was a weird thing. Really, it's a ghost story, you know. I want to go back and take that tour again.
Yeah, well, that's cool. That's cool. Yeah. The orbs and the ghosts, they go hand in hand. Bigfoot and orbs seems to be going hand in hand a lot now too, and I don't understand. That's something I don't understand. So that's kind of like a question I throw out there with the people when they come on.
Sometimes you hear stories where there's a Bigfoot UFO connection, which I can't understand, but yet
I don't hear these stories either. I know. Yeah, I've heard of encounters. I've not interviewed anybody yet that has actually seen this occur, but I've heard of people telling about their encounters where they say they saw Bigfoot coming out of a UFO. I'm like, what?
Oh, they actually saw him coming out of it?
Yes.
That's new to me.
Yeah.
I saw a couple reports where people saw the UFO, and then a couple minutes later they saw the Bigfoot. Well, I've never heard of one actually walking out of a UFO.
Yeah. Well, I've actually heard of one story where these people swore they saw a Bigfoot coming down out of a beam of light out of a UFO. I don't know. I mean, have I seen that? No. Do I believe it? I don't know. Yeah. I mean,
I am not a person to call anybody a liar.
Exactly.
I always give people the benefit of the doubt, you know, unless you can tell that they're nuts or something like that.
Well, I'm nuts, but you know, that's a different story.
I guess I am too.
Yeah, nah, it's all good. But yeah, when I first started talking about hearing a gorilla in the woods, so many people that I've known for years were calling me crazy. Oh, you're crazy. You're stupid. You know, what are you drinking? What are you smoking? Nothing. It happened. I'm telling you, it happened. No, it didn't. Okay, so then for a long time, I just didn't talk about it. And then, like I told you earlier, once I got to a certain age, I'm like, you know what? I don't care anymore. Then I started wanting to hear about other people, you know, that, hey, I don't want to talk about it. No, talk about it. Makes you feel better, you know?
So Fiona and Frank and I and this other girl, Wendy, used to make these little outings to like spooky places. One really, I'll tell you a very quick ghost story.
No,
So
let's hear it.
Frank found the cemetery in Rhinebeck, right? So we go to Rhinebeck, and there was an area that was all overgrown with huge vines and trees. And there was like a mausoleum. In the old days, they sometimes used to build the mausoleum into a hill.
Mm-hmm.
So it didn't have really like walls, like, you know, it wasn't like a structure, I should say. You know, it was built into a hill. And that's what this one was. It was probably over 200 years old. And the front doors were blown wide open. So we went to investigate. Now, I just bought 2 new toys. I bought a spirit box and an EVP recorder. So we get to the front of this really old mausoleum. We look in, we have flashlights, and you could see there was actually really, really old human bones. And we wanted to be respectful. We weren't going to walk in and trample on someone's grave. So we only walked in like a couple of feet. We saw like this tiny coffin that was obviously made for a baby that was totally disintegrated. We saw some human bones, and human bones, when they're really old, are brown. You know, when a fresh bone is white or gray, but as they age, they get brown, darker and darker. You could see these things were ancient. So we were standing there, and Frank was fooling with the EVP because they were new to us, you know. And I had the spirit box, and I have Fiona next to me. So we turned the spirit box on, and you know the noise it makes, like the staticky noise. And all of a sudden, we heard a man's voice. I looked at Fiona, she looked at me, but we couldn't make out what he said. A couple seconds later, we hear this guy's voice, and he distinctly says, "I'm in hell." So Fiona says, "Oh," she says to him, "you need to go to heaven." And the voice responds, "Not this guy."
No.
Almost with sarcasm. Ghosts can be sarcastic.
Yeah.
I pick Fiona's brain all the time because we don't know what the hereafter is like. But she speaks to dead people, so she has some insight. She told me, when you die, you're the same. You don't grow wings and become an angel and all that. She says, if you were an asshole on earth, you're an asshole in the spirit world. She says she's run into spirits that still talk about money because they were so consumed with when they were in the material world. She says it actually carries on. And she says there's nice spirits and there's not nice spirits. And I just thought that was cool. But it always stuck in my mind that she told me that, you know,
So,
you don't change.
So basically, I'm cursed to talk about Bigfoot and weird stuff for eternity now. Thanks, man.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great, though. Well, at some point, you know, if Fiona ever starts feeling better, I'd love to have you guys back on.
Sure, anytime. You're a nice guy. It was fun.
Yeah, and I feel bad that she didn't feel good for the interview, but
Yeah.
But you know, hey, we got every Thursday from now until forever, even if I'm in the spirit world, I'll still come back on here and do the podcast on Thursdays. As long as I can get my producer Dirty to come along with me. But yeah, there he goes. He's messing with me right now. But we're doing it remote today, so we're trying something different. But it's working out so far. So, well, Frank and Paul, do you guys got anything you want to add or promote or anything like that before we get out of here today?
Keep doing what you're doing. I love it.
All right, cool, man. Well, I want to tell you, Frank and Paul Patch, I definitely appreciate you guys coming on. Everybody out there, for me and Dirty and our new friends, Frank and Paul, keep it creepy.
Yeah, out in the woods where the shadows creep. I'm trying to find the legend that the people keep. Bigfoot's the name, got a story to tell. Footprints in the mud, can't you hear the bell? Whispers in the night, can you feel that chill? Bigfoot on the run, he's a legend, keep it real. Bigfoot, yeah, he's the talk of the town. Creeping through the trees, never wearing a frown. Legend of the forest, he's got a big stride. As the trap beats thump, you know he's got pride. Like I'm on a quest, searching for the homie, you know he's the best. Got my camera ready, heightened senses on blast. Snap a shot of Sasquatch, legend unsurpassed. Eyes in the dark, you can't catch what you can't see. King of the woods, living wild and free. Bigfoot, yeah, he's the talk of the town. Creeping through the trees, never wearing a frown. Legend of the forest, he's got a big stride. As the trap beats thump, you know he's got pride.